The sky over Viridia Prime was not a sky as humans might understand it. It was a vast, shimmering dome of controlled energy, etched with the gentle lanes of traffic for starships the size of cities. Below, the Imperial Palace stretched across the horizon, a monument of glittering spirestone and captured starlight. It was the heart of an empire that had ruled 10,000 suns for 1,000 years. Its science was complete. Its power was absolute. Its peace was enforced. This was what Emperor Korvax, his scales the color of deep amethyst and his robes heavy with the light of dead stars, knew to be true. So the alarms were not just a sound. They were an impossibility. A sharp, psychic screech that tore through the minds of every Viridian in the capital. It was the sound of the impossible happening. In the war nest, a room of swirling holograms and silent, anxious officials, General Osungho barked at his subordinates. "Report. What is violating our space? A Kaithar High Fleet? A singularity drill?" "Nothing, General," a young officer, Li Hana, said, her voice tight. Her fingers flew over a console that showed nothing but empty space. Perimeter grids are silent. Long-range scanners detect no approach signature, no warp tunnel disruption. The object? It just is. It is already here. The main viewer flickered, hovering serenely above the ceremonial spires, as if it had always been there, was a ship. It was tiny, barely the size of an Imperial shuttle. Its hull was a dull, gray metal, unadorned by lights or markings. It made no sound. It emitted no energy signature beyond the faint infrared glow of life support. It was, by every Imperial standard, a piece of space junk. Yet it hung in the most heavily defended volume of space in the galaxy, having arrived without permission, without warning, and without breaking a single law of physics the Empire recognized. Emperor Korvax's ancient eyes narrowed. Pride warred with cold curiosity. To destroy it would be simple, but to destroy a mystery was the act of a fearful child, not an emperor. "Hail it," he commanded, his voice a low rumble. "Let us see what ghosts we are dealing with." After a tense moment, a voice replied. It was calm, clear, and translated perfectly into the Imperial tongue. "Galactic Imperium of Viridia, this is the Earth vessel Curiosity. We come in peace. We request diplomatic dialogue." Earth. The word meant nothing. Database searches returned null. A species unknown, from a world unlisted. In the throne room, under the eyes of 100 noble houses, Korvax made his decision. Grant them landing clearance in the protocol zone. Bring their representatives to me. Under guard. The human ship descended, not with the roar of anti-grav or the pulse of thrusters, but in utter silence, as if it were merely being lowered on a string. From it emerged 2 figures. The first was a man of average height, Choi Ji-hun. His hair was black, his face was calm, and he wore a simple dark blue uniform without rank or decoration. Beside him was a woman, Kong Min-ji, her expression one of open, polite interest as she looked at the towering, ornate architecture. They were flanked by a full centuria of Imperial guards, their powered armor humming, their particle rifles held ready. The humans seemed mildly surprised by the show of force, but unafraid. The walk to the throne room was long, designed to intimidate. The humans did not gawk at the floating sculptures or the living tapestries. They simply walked, occasionally speaking to each other in soft, melodic sounds. Their lack of awe was itself disconcerting. In the cavernous throne room, Emperor Korvax sat, a giant of quiet power. At his right hand stood Park Tae-seok, the director of the Imperial Science Directorate, his 4 eyes blinking in alternating sequence as he analyzed the newcomers. "You stand in the presence of the Emperor," intoned a herald. "You will state your origin and purpose." Ji-hun gave a small, respectful nod of his head, not a bow. I am Choi Ji-hun, appointed speaker for Earth. This is Kong Min-ji, our systems specialist. We are explorers. Our purpose is to meet other civilizations, to exchange knowledge, and to extend the hand of friendship. His words were simple, his tone sincere, but the silence that followed was heavy. Finally, Park Tae-seok could not contain himself. Explorers? In that, your vessel registers no drive signature, no shield harmonics, no weapons energy. It is a hull with life support. How did you cross the interstellar void? Where is your quantum singularity core? Your warp field generator? Ji-hun turned his calm gaze to the scientist. We do not use warp drives. The method is inefficient for us. We use spatial folding. A murmur rippled through the court. Spatial folding was a theoretical dead end in imperial science. It required energies greater than a supernova to create a fold large enough for a probe, let alone a ship. Preposterous, Tae-seok spat, his cranial frill flushing a light blue. The energy requirements alone violate the law of cosmic conservation. Explain the principle. Ji-hun considered for a moment. Imagine space as a sheet of paper, he began, his voice patient. Your method of travel is to draw a very fast line from point A to point B on the sheet. Ours is to gently bring point B to point A, then smooth the paper back out. We do not move through space. We ask space to rearrange itself. The metaphor was simple. Its implication was not. General Sung-ho, standing stiffly with the military contingent, growled. You ask? You speak of space-time as if it were a servant. Not a servant, Min-ji spoke for the first time, her voice lighter but no less clear. More like a colleague. One you must work with, not command. Tae-seok was furious. This is nonsense. Child's poetry. Where does the energy for this asking come from? What is your power source? Our power source is stable and self-contained, Ji-hun said. It is difficult to explain in your terms. It is not a reactor that makes energy. It is a negotiator that borrows it. From where? Tae-seok pressed, stepping forward, Ji-hun at his eyes. From where it is not being used. The answer was not an evasion. It was a statement of fact that seemed, to the imperial scientist, to be pure madness. It was a closed loop of illogic. The emperor had been silent, watching. He saw not defiance in the humans, but a quiet certainty that was more troubling than any boast. They were not lying. They were explaining a color to someone who was blind. Enough, Korvax's voice cut through the tension. Your words are rings that lead nowhere. Your technology, if it is as you say, is of great interest. But talk is the wind. The Imperium is built on tangible truth. You will demonstrate this impossible technology. Attest your vessel against one of ours. Let us see the strength of your colleague. Ji-hun and Min-ji exchanged a look. It was not fear, but something resembling reluctance. Violence is not our purpose, Ji-hun said. It is a simulation, the Emperor said, though his tone left no doubt it would be as real as he demanded. A demonstration of capability. Do you accept? Ji-hun took a slow breath, then nodded. We accept. But we will only defend. We have no weapons to demonstrate. A ripple of disdainful laughter came from the military bloc. A ship with no weapons was a coffin. Emperor Korvax leaned back. The first move had been made. The humans had brought their impossible claims to the heart of the galaxy. Now, he would see if those claims would break against the unyielding reality of imperial might. The disbelief in the room was a physical thing, a wall. Tomorrow, that wall would meet its first test. The Imperial Grand Testing Field stretched across the barren moon like a giant's game board. Geometric trenches and weapon-scarred rock formations stood as silent witnesses to 1,000 demonstrations of power. Today, the air, or rather, the emptiness crackled with a different tension. It was the tension of an audience waiting for a magician to fail Dot in the primary observation bunker. Carved into a cliff face, the mood was a mix of scorn and cold curiosity. Emperor Korvax watched from a central platform, his expression unreadable. Beside him, Park Tae-seok fidgeted, his data slate glowing with projected failure models for the human ship. General Oh Sung-ho stood like a statue of polished armor, his eyes fixed on the tactical hologram. On the far side of the bunker, Choi Ji-hun and Kang Min-ji observed quietly, their plain uniforms a stark contrast to the glittering imperial garb. On the main viewer, the two vessels hung in the silent black. One was the Invincible, a dagger-shaped imperial battlecruiser. Its hull shone with the dark blue of energized neutronium, and its weapon ports glowed with a malevolent red light. It was a symbol of conquest, a masterpiece of focused destruction. The other was the Curiosity. It looked even smaller and more fragile against the vastness of the moon and the bulk of its opponent. It was a gray pebble next to a sword. "Simulation parameters are set," announced a tactical officer, her voice echoing. "Weapons will fire at full simulated intensity. Shields on the Invincible are at standard strength. The human vessel has declined to activate any measurable defensive systems." Sung-ho allowed himself a thin, grim smile. Arrogance or ignorance. Both lead to the same end. Begin. There was no countdown. The Invincible simply unleashed hell. Bolts of superheated plasma, each capable of melting a mountain, streaked across the distance. Gravity missiles, which would create a crushing singularity upon impact, followed in their wake. The space between the ships became a storm of light and twisted physics, all rushing toward the tiny, motionless Curiosity. In the bunker, Min-ji didn't even look at the screen. She watched a small, handheld device with a simple readout. Ji-hun simply stood with his hands clasped behind his back. The first plasma bolt struck the center of the human ship, or rather, it passed through it. The holographic display showed the energy signature piercing the Gil Curiosity's outline and continuing into space beyond. There was no explosion, no energy dispersal, no impact. The second bolt did the same, then the third. The gravity missiles flew through the target area and detonated harmlessly far away, their singularities sucking in only vacuum. Silence, thick and heavy, filled the bunker. "Sensor error." Tae-seok barked, his frill flushing purple. "Recalibrate." They must have deployed a scattering field. Officer Lee Hana, operating a sensor suite, shook her head, her face pale. "No, Director. Sensors are perfect. The weapons. They connected. But the target's atomic signature shows zero interaction. It's as if the ship was not there at the moment of impact. But it is there. We are reading its life signs, its thermal profile. It is there, but not." General Sung-ho's smile was gone. "What trick is this? A hologram?" On the screen, the Curiosity remained solid and gray. A COM channel opened, and Min-ji's voice, calm and clear, filled the room. "Imperial forces, this is Kang Min-ji. The demonstration of passive defense is complete. We are temporally out of phase with your attack vectors by a factor of 0.0003 seconds. You are firing at where we were, not where we are. It is a very efficient shield. Temporal manipulation." The words hung in the air like a blasphemy. To touch time was the dream of gods and madmen. The Empire's greatest scientists considered it a theoretical fantasy, a equation that always ended with the dissolution of causality. "Impossible," Tae-seok whispered. But the doubt in his voice was new and raw. "This proves nothing but cowardice." Sung-ho roared, slamming a fist on the console. They hide. Can they act? Or only run away? He turned to the Emperor. My lord, order a full barrage sustained fire. Their trick must have a limit. Before Korvax could speak, Ji-hun turned. His voice was quiet but carried. General, if you wish to see an active measure, we can show one. A single, non-destructive demonstration. May we? The Emperor gave a single, slow nod. Proceed. On the screen, the curiosity finally moved. It didn't turn or thrust. It simply slid to the side, a smooth, unnatural motion, as if the universe itself had shifted around it. It stopped, positioned broadside to the Invincible. A small, unremarkable pod detached from its hull. It was about the size of a human chair. It drifted gently until it was midway between the two ships. We call this a reality anchor, Minji's voice explained. It is a tool for stabilization. Watch, please. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, a soft, gray light, the color of mist, pulsed from the pod. It was not a bright light. It was a dull, forgettable glow that expanded into a sphere about a kilometer wide, enveloping the front third of the mighty Invincible and the battlecruiser. Its running lights flickered and went out. The glow from its engines died instantly, not with a sputter, but as if someone had erased the concept of thrust from that area of space. The ship didn't slow down. It just ceased all momentum, hanging dead in space. On the tactical readout, Officer Hano let out a choked gasp. I am reading. Nothing, she stammered. No engine output. No energy flow. Inertial dampeners are offline. Internal gravity is failing. But it is not damage. There is no residual energy, no disruption field. It's like the laws of physics inside that sphere have been switched off. Inside the Invincible, the crew would be in panic. Objects not strapped down would start to drift as artificial gravity failed. Systems that relied on fundamental forces would simply cease to function. The gray sphere held for exactly 5 seconds. Then the misty light winked out. The pod went dark and drifted inert. Physics returned like a slammed door. The Invincible systems rebooted in a chaotic surge. Emergency lights flashed on. Its engines sputtered and reignited, pushing the massive ship into an uncontrolled, slow tumble. It was not destroyed. It was not even scarred. It was humiliated. It had been made a ghost in its own universe for 5 heartbeats. The observation bunker was a tomb. The arrogance, the scorn, the cold curiosity, all were gone, washed away by a tide of primal disbelief. This was not more advanced shield technology or a better weapon. This was something that operated on a level before technology, on the level of reality itself. General Sung-ho stared, his face ashen. His mighty warship, the pride of the fleet, had been rendered a floating statue by a device no bigger than a piece of furniture. Park Tae-seok was frantically scrolling through the sensor data, his 4 eyes wide with a horror that was not fear, but the anguish of a man whose holy text had just been proven wrong. Only Emperor Korvax and the 2 humans showed no overt emotion. Korvax's ancient eyes were fixed on the drifting, dark pod. He had seen the impossible made manifest. It wasn't loud or destructive. It was quiet, and that made it infinitely more terrifying. Ji-hun broke the silence. The anchor is a safety device. It calms violent systems by asking local reality to be still, to forget entropy for a moment. We use it to safely study supernova or stabilize faulty reactors. He said it as if explaining a fire extinguisher. Minji added, gently, your ship is fine. Its systems are built for a stable, predictable universe. They just experienced a moment of deep peace. It will be confusing for them. General Sung-ho found his voice, a ragged thing. What are you? Ji-hun finally turned fully to face the assembled might of the galaxy, his expression still one of calm patience. We are explorers, and today we have explored the limits of your understanding. The question now is what you will do with that discovery. The silence that followed the humans back to their quarters was a different kind of quiet. It wasn't the silence of dismissal, but the silence of a deep, unsettling wound. The Imperial Palace, a place that had always thrummed with the confident energy of absolute power, now felt like a stage after the main actor had forgotten his lines in the secure lab wing of the Imperial Science Directorate. The air was thick with the smell of ozone and anxiety. Park Tae-seok paced before a wall of shimmering data streams, his usually impeccable robes disheveled. The sensor logs from the demonstration played over and over the weapons passing through nothing. The reality anchor's gray mist, the terrifying flatline of physical laws. His colleague, Kim Yoo-jin, watched him with concern. She was a careful woman, her own mind brilliant, but tempered by a deep respect for the unknown. Tae-seok, you haven't slept. The data is not changing. It is simply impossible for our models. Nothing is impossible. Tae-seok snapped, whirling around. It is only science we do not yet possess. They gave us an answer. Negotiation with reality. It is a metaphor. There must be underlying principles. Mathematics we can decode. His eyes, all four of them, were burning with a feverish light. The humiliation on the testing field had curdled into a desperate obsession. To understand this was no longer a professional goal. It was a need. The breakthrough of sorts came from the humans themselves. After a day of tense discussions with the Emperor's Council, Choi Ji-hun had offered a gesture of goodwill, a single data crystal. It contained, he said, the foundational theory behind their power source. The basic algebra of borrowing, he called it, when Tae-seok slotted the crystal into the Directorate's most secure analysis engine. He expected encrypted wonders, layers of impossible code. What he got was a series of elegant, shockingly simple equations. They were beautiful in their symmetry, but they led to conclusions that made the universe seem thin and fragile. Yoo-jin was the first to voice the terrifying implication. She had been working in silence for hours when she suddenly pushed back from her console as if it had bitten her. Tae-seok, this isn't a theory of generation. It's a theory of leakage. What are you talking about? The core equation. It doesn't describe creating energy from mass or vacuum fluctuations. It describes identifying a pressure differential between adjacent realities. A crack. Their device doesn't make power. It finds a place where energy is overflowing from another layer of existence, and it carefully siphons it. Her voice dropped to a whisper. They aren't engineers. They are gardeners tending wounds in the multiverse. Tae-seok stared at the equations. He saw it now. The beauty of it was monstrous. It relied on a universe that was not whole and sealed, like theirs, but one that was porous, scarred, and intertwined with others. A universe where the rules were soft. This is why their explanations sound like nonsense, Yoo-jin continued, her face pale. They're not describing physics as a set of commands. They're describing it as a relationship. Their spatial fold doesn't break light speed. It finds a fold in the cosmos that already exists and steps through. Their anchor doesn't break laws. It asks the local laws to rest. For Tae-seok, this was not enlightenment. It was an insult. The imperial way was mastery, control. You commanded energy. You did not borrow it from some phantom dimension. You enforced laws. You did not ask them to rest. It is a crutch, he declared, his voice tight. A technology for a species too weak to tame their own reality. We have perfect, strong laws here. We can master this principle with proper force, with our superior understanding of quantum binding. Yu Jin felt a chill. Tae Seok, no. The equations are clear. Attempting to force this process in a high-stability reality like ours. The crystal's own footnotes warn of recursive paradox. It's not a matter of power. It's a matter of compatibility. He wasn't listening. The obsession had him. If the human way was to gently siphon, the imperial way would be to pump. To prove their strength, he ordered a containment field built, a scaled-down version of their finest reactor housing. He would use the human equations, but he would feed them with the raw, focused power of an imperial singularity core to rip open a stable energy conduit. Yu Jin protested. She was ignored. The experiment was prepared in a sub-level lab, shielded behind meters of reinforced space stone. Only the two of them remained inside the control room. Tae Seok initiated the sequence. The singularity core hummed, pouring unimaginable force into the elegant, delicate human equations. For a second, it seemed to work. A point of light appeared in the containment field. It was not gray, like the human device, but a painful, brilliant white. Then it changed. The light didn't expand. It sagged. It became a sphere about a meter wide, but its surface was not smooth. It flickered with impossible colors that hurt to look at, colors that seemed to describe shapes that couldn't exist. Inside that sphere, the monitors went mad. Reading contradictory data, Yu Jin said, her voice trembling. The temperature is both absolute zero and 1,000,000 degrees. Light is moving in a perfect loop and standing still. Mass is... Its reading is both solid and a probability wave. It was a logical paradox, given physical form. A bubble where reality could not decide what it was. The sphere did not explode. It simply was. And then, slowly, it began to affect the world around it. The reinforced space stone wall next to it didn't crack or melt. It aged. In seconds, its smooth surface became pitted, then rough, then crumbled into dust. The dust then seeming to blow away into nothing against the airless room. The effect spread in a perfect circle, not destroying, but erasing time itself from matter. The containment alarm screamed. Not of breach, but of conceptual instability. Tae Seok stood frozen, his obsession shattering into pure horror as he watched the very firmament of his universe become undone by his own hand. The sphere lasted for 10 seconds. Then, with a sound like a sigh, it winked out. The lab was silent. A perfect hemispherical scoop of the floor, the wall, and part of the ceiling was simply gone, edged with a surface that looked impossibly smooth, as if it had been sheared off at the beginning of time. The air in the room felt thin and old. The door hissed open. Choi Ji-hun stood there, having been summoned by panicked security. He was not accompanied by guards. He looked at the scene, the devastated lab, Tae Seok's stunned face, Yu Jin's tear-streaked one. He looked at the readings on the dead consoles. His calm face finally showed an emotion, a profound, deep sadness. He walked over to the edge of the perfect hemispherical cut and knelt, running a hand just above the edge. He didn't touch it. "You tried to command it," he said softly, not looking at Tae Seok. "Your universe. It is strong. It is rigid. It has clear, firm rules. Beautiful rules. But our technology speaks a different language. It is a language of asking, of listening to the whispers between the laws." He stood and faced the scientist. The anger and pride had drained from Tae Seok, leaving only a hollow shell. "We come from a place where the rules were never so kind. Where to survive, we had to learn to hear the cracks, to feel the soft spots. Your tools are made to build within a perfect palace. Ours were made to find shelter in an endless shifting storm. You cannot use a storm catcher to drill a mountain. Ji-hun gestured to the ruined lab. This is what happens when the mountain tries to answer the storm. I am sorry you had to see it. He left then, leaving the two Imperial scientists in the ruins of their understanding. The impossible technology was not just beyond them. It was, in a deep and fundamental way, forbidden to them. The lesson was not about advancement, but about nature. They had looked into the human toolbox and seen not better wrenches, but living vines that could only grow in alien soil. The disbelief in the room was no longer about capability. It was about identity. The private gardens of the Emperor were not a place of wild growth. Every leaf on every tree was shaped by genetic art to display perfect fractal patterns. Every flower bloomed in unison, releasing scents calibrated to promote calm and focus. The waterfalls fell in harmonic frequencies. It was nature, perfected and imprisoned by will. Emperor Korvax walked here now, not for peace, but because its rigid beauty was the only thing that felt real anymore. He had dismissed his guards. Standing by a still pool that mirrored the triple moons was the one person he needed to see. Choi Ji-hun stood waiting, his hands again clasped behind his back, looking at the engineered blossoms with an expression of quiet curiosity. Your scientist. Tae-seok is recovering, Korvax began, his voice the low rumble of distant thunder. His mind is intact, though his pride is not. He will not experiment again. He stopped a few paces from Ji-hun, his massive frame casting a long shadow in the artificial moonlight. The report from Kim Yoo-jin is on my desk. It speaks of conceptual instability and paradox containment failure. It uses words to describe what it cannot understand. He turned his ancient, tired eyes directly on the human. No more metaphors, Choi Ji-hun. No more poetry about asking and borrowing. I am the Emperor of 10,000 suns. My empire is built on truth that can be measured and wielded. Tell me the truth. How? How can your people do these things when the fundamental laws of existence say they cannot? Ji-hun was silent for a long moment, watching the perfect water ripple from a preordained breeze. Your laws are true, Emperor, he said finally. For here. But they are not universal. They are local. He gestured around the garden. This place is a masterpiece of control. You have taken the wild, messy idea of a garden and made it obey. Your whole universe is like this. Its rules are strong, clear, and constant. They are a fortress of logic. You have spent millennia mastering every stone in its walls. Korvax said nothing, waiting. Our home, Ji-hun continued, his gaze turning inward, was not a fortress. It was a ruin. A chaotic, beautiful, dangerous ruin. The laws of physics on Earth were weak, unreliable, faint whispers, not firm commands. Gravity might flicker for an instant in a certain cave. The speed of light was more of a suggestion in some magnetic valleys. Reality was soft, malleable. To build a fire, our earliest ancestors didn't just need to understand friction. They had to convince a spark to choose to become a flame in a world that wasn't sure if combustion was allowed that day. He picked up a perfectly round stone from the path. Your people saw a universe of stone and learned to carve palaces. Mine saw a universe of water and learned to swim. Then we learned to feel the currents. Then to ask the currents for direction. Korvax tried to imagine it. A world where light did not always travel straight, where heat did not always flow from hot to cold. It was the vision of a nightmare. How did you not tear yourselves apart? By not fighting it, Ji-hun said simply. We could not dominate a reality that shifted like sand. So we learned its moods. Our first technology was not the lever or the wheel. It was a focused thought, a shared belief that could, for a moment, made the rules a little more solid around us. What you might call psionics was, for us, simply survival. A child who could not subtly persuade heat to stay in their body on a cold night would not live. He placed the stone back exactly where he found it. Our entire science grew from this. We never developed the brute force tools you have, because we never had a brute force reality. We developed senses ways to feel the tension in space, the texture of time. Our mathematics does not describe commands. It describes relationships, agreements. Our engine doesn't break the law of conservation. It finds a place where that law is already being bent by the pressure of another reality and shares the load. Minji's voice came from the entrance to the garden. She walked over, having been given permission to join. She had overheard. "The reality anchor," she said, her tone gentle, as if explaining to a child. "To you, it seemed to switch off physics. To us, it is a song that reality hears. A song of stillness. In our unstable home, sometimes you had to sing to the chaos to make a calm spot, or you would be torn apart. Your universe is already so still, so calm. The anchor's song here is too loud. It asks for a stillness that is unnatural for your strong, firm laws. That is why it caused such a violent reaction." Korvax looked from one human to the other. The puzzle pieces, mad as they were, began to form a terrible, awe-inspiring picture. It was not that humanity had climbed higher on the same mountain. They were on an entirely different mountain, made of different material. "So your impossible technology," the Emperor said slowly, "is just the natural adaptation of a species that evolved in an impossible universe," Hihun finished. "Your disbelief is correct, Emperor Korvax. By the laws of your cosmos, what we do is impossible. It is magic. But by the laws of ours, it is as natural as breathing. We are not more advanced than you. We are differently evolved. Your tools are for building in stone. Ours are for navigating an ocean. You cannot use a hammer to sail, and we cannot use a sail to carve a statue." The Emperor stared into the pool, seeing not the reflection of the moons, but the reflection of his own empire. A magnificent, towering edifice built on the surest foundation imaginable. And now he understood it was built on just one type of ground. "You speak of your past as a ruin," he rumbled. "But you have mastered this. Ocean. You have starships." Minji nodded. "We learned. We listened. For thousands of years, we learned to hear the whispers of the cosmos. We learned which whispers were promises and which were threats. Our technology is the art of having a conversation with existence. A very polite, very careful conversation." A profound fatigue settled over Korvax, not of the body, but of the spirit. The challenge was not military or scientific. It was existential. How does a civilization that has mastered everything it ever knew deal with one that mastered everything by knowing nothing was ever truly fixed? He had asked for truth, and he had received it. The truth was that humanity's power came from a foundational loneliness and flexibility his people could never truly comprehend. They were not wizards. They were survivors from a place where the universe itself was a wild, untamed thing. And they had learned to walk through its storms by becoming part of the wind. "Leave me," the Emperor said, his voice soft. The two humans bowed their heads and walked silently from the garden. Korvax remained, looking at his perfect, controlled world. For the first time in his long life, it felt not like a triumph, but like a cage. A beautiful, unbreakable cage built in a universe that was, he now knew, just one room in an infinite, shifting, and impossibly strange house. The Grand Senate Chamber was a storm held in glass. Under its vast, crystalline dome, the assembled lords, generals, and directors of the Galactic Imperium were a sea of agitated color and harsh sound. The calm that had followed the demonstration and the lab accident was gone, shattered by the implications that had now sunk in. General Oh Sung-ho stood at the military podium, his fist pounding the resonant stone. They are a weapon that does not look like one. They turn our own reality against us. That anchor could disable an entire fleet. They could walk into this chamber, and our guards' weapons would be less useful than harsh language. We must contain them, now, while their one ship is still here. From the science bench, Park Tae-seok looked pale and shrunken, but his voice was firm with a new grim understanding. Contain them with what, General? Your ships that cannot touch them? Your guns that fire at yesterday? They do not violate our laws. They operate on a layer beneath them. It is like trying to arrest a ghost with handcuffs made of matter. He did not defend the humans. He simply stated the impossible obstacle they represented. A younger voice cut through the din. Senator Moon Sua, her robes marked with the sigil of a frontier system, rose. For 1,000 years, we have believed our understanding was complete. We have mapped the galaxy and declared it known. Now we have encountered not a greater power, but a different kind of power. The first question is not of threat, but of truth. They have offered knowledge. Should we not first seek to understand, even if we cannot ever wield it? Understand? Sung-ho roared. How do you understand a dream that can break your walls? They are a chaotic variable. They must be removed. The debate raged, a cacophony of fear, pride, and desperate logic. In a quiet observation gallery overlooking the chaos, Choi Ji-hun and Kang Min-ji watched. They had been invited to witness the conclusion, though they were not permitted to speak. They observed the anger, the fear, the dawning wonder in a few eyes like Senator Sua's and Officer Lee Hana's, who sat in the junior officers section, her eyes wide, recording everything. Finally, a deep, resonant chime silenced the chamber. Emperor Korvax entered, not with ceremony, but with a slow, heavy tread. He ascended to the central dais and looked out over his fractured empire. The weight of millennia seemed to rest on his scaled shoulders. The humans, he began, his voice quiet yet filling the vast space, have asked for nothing. They have not demanded tribute. They have not claimed territory. They have shown us power that makes our greatest strength seem like a child's toy, and then they called it a safety device. They have explained that their universe is a song, while ours is a stone. What does one do with such a revelation? He turned his gaze to the observation gallery. Choi Ji-hun, you have heard our fears. What is it that Earth wants from the Imperium? All eyes turned. Ji-hun stepped forward to the gallery rail. He did not raise his voice, but the chamber's acoustics carried his calm tone to every ear. Emperor Korvax, lords and ladies of the Imperium, we want nothing you have. Your territories, your resources, your technologies. They are yours, born of your history, your universe. We cannot use them, just as you cannot use our tools. They are made for different hands. He paused, letting the simple, disarming statement settle. We are explorers. Our purpose is to meet, to see, to learn, and when possible, to share perspectives. We do not come to teach you to build like us, for your foundation is different. You have built palaces in a universe of stone. We come from a universe of water. We cannot give you a hammer that works on water, but he looked at Minji, who gave a small nod of encouragement. But we can show you that the stone you stand on is not all there is. We can show you how to listen for the water underground. We can open a door, not to our workshop, but to a new way of seeing your own. He held up a simple data chip, identical to the first. This contains no equations. It contains experiences, sense recordings from our early history, the feeling of the unstable gravity field, the sight of light deciding its own path. The mental pattern used to ask heat to stay. You may never be able to do these things. Your universe is too strong, too solid. But you might learn to sense the solidity itself in a new way. You might find cracks of possibility you never dreamed were there. General Sung Ho looked furious, but also confused. It was not an offer of alliance or subjugation. It was an offer of homework. Senator Su-ah stood again. And in return? Min-ji answered this time, her voice clear and bright. In return, you tell us about your palaces. You show us the beauty of the stone. You teach us about strength and certainty and order. These are things we have little of. We would be grateful to learn. The proposal was so humble, so sideways, it left the chamber speechless. They had expected a demand, a threat, a deal. They were being offered a cultural exchange with a species that saw physics as a culture. Emperor Korvax studied the two humans. He saw no deceit. He saw the quiet patience of travelers who had seen many strange worlds and did not seek to own any of them. The terrible, destabilizing fear began to ebb, replaced by a vast and unsettling humility. You will not stay? Korvax asked. Our ship is small. Our journey is long, Jian said. We will go, but the door will remain open. A communications channel based on simple light and radio that will always be answered. You may call on us if you ever encounter a phenomenon that does not make sense in your universe of stone. We are good with things that do not make sense. With that, the humans bowed respectfully and left the gallery. The debate was over. There was nothing more to argue. They could not be fought. They could not be bought. They could only be accepted. Hours later, on the landing platform, the gray Curiosity sat under the triple moons. A small crowd had gathered, not the full Senate, but those whose minds had been most opened. Senator Su-ah, Officer Hana, a subdued Park Tae-seok, and Kim Yu-jin. Emperor Korvax himself stood at the forefront. Ji-hun and Min-ji offered final, simple handshakes, a human gesture the Imperials had learned. Thank you for your hospitality, Min-ji said. Thank you, Officer Hana blurted out, then composed yourself. For the perspective. The humans entered their ship. It lifted from the platform, again in utter silence. It rose into the violet sky, growing smaller. Then, without a flash of light, a burst of energy, or a tear in space, it simply was not there. One moment a ship, the next an empty point in the sky. A spatial fold, not a violent rupture, but a gentle agreement. The group on the platform stood looking at the empty space for a long time. The disbelief was gone. In its place was a profound, vertiginous awe. General Sung Ho, who had come despite himself, finally muttered, "What do we do now?" Emperor Korvax, his eyes still on the stars, answered softly, "We look at our stone palaces, General, and we wonder what the foundations feel like. We begin, for the first time in 1,000 years, to learn." Senator Su-ah smiled, a small, fierce thing. Officer Hana touched the data chip in her pocket, already thinking of the sensors she might recalibrate, not to see more, but to see differently. The galaxy had not gained a new enemy or a new master. It had gained a single, quiet, impossible question that would echo through its halls forever, changing everything.